ESPN welcomes you to the following presentation of the National Football League.
In Midtown Manhattan, where else would you like to be other than the 2004 NFL Draft? That's what these folks are saying. Storming into the theater here at Madison Square Garden as we reenact an April Classic.
You're always going to want the best player available.
It takes hard work,
determination,
to not be outdone,
to be the best possible football player that I could be.
2004, the hunt for the teams. The quest, pick a winner who passed the test. The nerve-wracking waiting separation of elite peers. You're checking the start of careers right here. Sweating and guessing, realize through busting boom. Getting in hard work, in result of the weight room. Open it up, the team, the league, the game at last. To the next names, NFL.
Eli Manning, a name like that commands respect. It also bears the weight of a family legacy. Robert Gallery, from Iowa farm boy to Outland Trophy winner. Next stop, the NFL. Tommy Harris, Army kid turned Lombardi Award winner. Where will his speed and power rank him next? Sean Taylor, the next Ronnie Lott, he's out to set a tone beyond comparison.
25 years, ESPN NFL Draft. 25 years of coverage for the first to the last. Gavel to gavel, from beginning to end. We're picking superstars, let the games begin. Fill the draft.
Welcome to ESPN's coverage of the 2004 NFL Draft, presented by Coors Light. They are inside, wearing the jerseys of all 32 teams. And when we mean all sorts are inside the theater at Madison Square Garden, we mean absolutely all sorts. From both coasts and all walks of life. Fans of the home teams, fans of the road teams, and yes, fans of a great family, the Mannings, father and son. This is their moment. Hello once again, everybody. I'm Chris Berman. So glad you can be with us here at the 69th Annual Selection Meeting.
2004 NFL Draft took place on April 24th and April 25th, 2004. The event was held at the theater at Madison Square Garden in New York City, New York.
Glad to be here, of course.
And his first with us, but a number one pick at 88 by Tom Landry of the Dallas Cowboys. Michael Irvin, glad to have you along.
Glad to be here, Boo. My first draft in New York. I love to be right here.
Before the draft, there's pre-draft hype about Eli Manning with his father, Archie Manning, and about if they would actually go and sign with the San Diego Chargers. They did not want to go to the Chargers and actually wanted to go to different teams.
Number one, the first family of quarterbacks, if you will. Archie Manning, drafted second overall by the Saints in 71. Peyton Manning, drafted first overall in the draft by the Colts in 98, and the reigning co-MVP. And Eli Manning, expected to be the number one pick in this draft. However, Eli Manning, word out, please, San Diego with the first pick, don't draft me. Maybe the New York Giants are a better fit. We still have San Diego on the clock. Stories to follow. The courts, Maurice Clarett challenge went all the way to two Supreme Court justices who denied the appeal to let Maurice Clarett and other underclassmen in the NFL draft. That's a continuing story, but Maurice Clarett, Mike Williams, etc., not a story today. And, of course, dwarfing it all, Pat Tillman, who traded in a career at safety for the Arizona Cardinals, and a pretty darn good one for serving with the U.S. Army Rangers in Afghanistan, killed in action Thursday night in battle at the age of 27. Heartfelt emotions out to his family, which include his next of kin, his football family, which would be high school, which would be Arizona State, which would be the National Football League, as you can hear everybody in this room and everybody in America. Pat Tillman and 700 other Americans have lost their lives in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we recognize them all. And a little bit later on, and not too long because Arizona picks third, we will have a tribute to Pat Tillman. Mort, now we go back to the top of our story. Eli Manning. Boy, did this swirl every day. What do we expect now?
It's incredible that we have the Mannings, the classy family, getting booed even right here like that. That's just about the drama we have right now. But let's go back 10 days ago when the San Diego Chargers called Tom Condon, the agent for Eli Manning, and said, we choose to negotiate with you right now for Eli Manning. He's going to be our first pick, and Tom Condon sends the message, no, we choose not to negotiate. We don't want you to take Eli Manning. At that point, Dean Spanos, the president of the Chargers, called Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner of the NFL Football League, and Tagliabue said, let me call Archie Manning a friend. And at that point, Tagliabue asked him, Archie, to get involved in this process. Archie, as we know, met with the Chargers, and basically Condon called this past Wednesday night, reiterated the family position. We do not want Eli to be a Charger. Why? The Mannings have not detailed these issues, the whys, but clearly it is an indictment of the Spanos family that owns the Chargers. They don't see much hope. They don't see a commitment, and that's my interpretation of the events, Chris, and that's where we're at right now, where the Chargers committed to taking Eli Manning unless something dramatic happens shortly.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but it could even after the very first pick is made, and we will obviously address that throughout the first hour because phone lines could be burning. Mel, let's go back to 1998. Peyton Manning was the #1 pick of the Indianapolis Colts. We know what he's done as a pro. It's great. Peyton Manning coming out, Eli Manning coming out. Are they the same? Eli equal Peyton?
Perception, Chris, I think right now the rating is the same. I think Eli has the similar number of critics as Peyton did, as Troy Aikman did. Quarterbacks coming out early, unless you're John Elway, in terms of the NFL draft, will have their share of skeptics. There's going to be mixed opinion. Peyton Manning, everybody said, well, hey, Ryan Leaf's better. In this case, Eli Manning, hey, Ben Roethlisberger's better. Philip Rivers is better. Bottom line is Eli Manning elevated this Ole Miss Rebel team to bowl status. They were a series away from beating co-national champion LSU. This kid can throw the football. He's got size, got more mobility than Peyton. And I think by going back for his senior year, Chris, he really benefited because he got that fire, that passion that I didn't see as a junior. I saw it more so as a senior.
Yeah, we all saw it as a senior, that's for sure. Well, right now, the San Diego Chargers have seen it as well. It's early out in San Diego, but somehow I feel that people have been up there for a long, long time. At Chargers headquarters is one of our many quarterbacks, Sean Salisbury. Sean, good morning.
Good morning, Boomer. Thanks, and hope you guys have a great day. Let me tell you the latest on what's going on here in San Diego. We were supposed to have President, CEO, and owner Dean Spanos with us here at the top. But he said the only way he wouldn't if they were in a very important decision-making process, and obviously that's where they are. And just in the last 15 or 20 minutes, Mr. Spanos has gone into A.J. Smith's office outside the draft room, closed the door, and those men are in there trying to decide on the decision. And the decision right now as we stand, as Mort said, is that they will draft Eli Manning with the first pick unless there's a blockbuster trade. Well, there hasn't been a blockbuster trade, and they're prepared to dig their heels in and deal with the ramifications of taking Eli Manning and not being able to sign him. And we'll get an opportunity sometime during the next hour to talk to Dean Spanos and find out exactly all about that. Let's head out to the Giants in New York, Sal Paolantonio. They got the 4th pick right now, Sal.
Sean, they do, and the Giants are just waiting to hear what the Chargers are willing to do here. But here's the news that we've heard, is that there's a possibility of a way to get out of this, a scenario that's being discussed behind the scenes, that the Chargers would take Eli Manning with the first pick, and the Giants at number 4 might take Philip Rivers, and that the two teams would then trade the picks. Everybody knows that Marty Schottenheimer likes Philip Rivers, and the Giants, of course, covet Eli Manning. That is one possibility, Boomer, that is being discussed as a way to get out of this.
Well, we have a little more time at that, Sal, and of course we'll check in with Sean and you and all around the league. But right now, we might as well check into the green room where Eli Manning, his father Archie, are waiting to hear what happens along with the rest of America. Let's go down to Susie Colbert. Suze?
Thanks, Chris. Right off the top, Eli, why don't you want to play for the Chargers?
You know, we're not really giving details right now. We just, we've made our decision, and that's what we're sticking to.
Who's influenced you the most?
You know, just, it's not really an influence. This was my decision. It was, you know, I wanted to do this. I was not, you know, told to do this. We talked about it, and I thought it was the best idea, so I went with it.
Archie, 1998, Peyton, #1 pick to the Colts. The year before, they were 3-13. Why is this different?
Well, all teams are different. It was kind of a start over there, and people that were there, a lot of people that they had. Just there's so many, as I said, we weren't going to talk about all these issues and all these factors. There were a lot of them presented to Eli, and he made this decision. But every organization is different, Susan.
As a family, how emotional, difficult has it been challenging the NFL?
It's been tough as a family, and it's been, you know, we're concerned about Eli, but we're also concerned about we care about this league and the people. We're not trying to distract or disrupt anything. So it was a very hard decision for Eli. Our family, we're supporting.
We all know the tradition, #1 pick. What happens when your name is called? What are you going to do?
You know, again, I don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't know what the Chargers are going to do. So, you know, if my name's called first or whenever it's called, you know, I'm going to do what everybody else does.
If the Chargers call your name when I talk to you after the pick, will you be wearing a Chargers hat?
You know, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Good luck, guys. Thanks. Chris?
Susie, Eli, Archie, thank you very much. And now to get things started here in New York officially, the commissioner...
Also around the time of this draft, a true legend, Pat Tillman, died while he was fighting. He is a true soldier and a true warrior, and God bless him.
And the commissioner knows better than all of us.
Good afternoon. If you give me your attention. Yesterday, all of us learned of the tragic news of the death of Pat Tillman, the former Arizona Cardinals safety. 2 years ago, Pat Tillman left the Cardinals to join the United States Army, where he became a member of the elite Ranger unit. Like the 5 Marines standing with me today, Pat served in Iraq, and he was on another mission in Afghanistan when his unit came under attack. Pat Tillman personified the best values of America and of the National Football League. Like other men and women protecting our freedom around the globe, he made the ultimate sacrifice and gave his life in the service of his country. After talking to Pat's family, we will make certain that Pat's values and what he represents to America and to the National Football League continue to have a permanent place in the league. Please join me in a moment of silence in memory of all those men and women, all those heroes who have given their lives for all of us. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And now we open the 2004 college draft, and the San Diego Chargers have the first choice and are on the clock.
Well, let us hope that every man drafted this weekend can live up to the man that Pat Tillman was on the gridiron and for his country. We'll be back with the NFL draft in a moment as the Mannings will find out truly whither, where, and maybe why.
Lines are reading in New York City. Elway telling everyone that he will play for the Yankees and not play professional football.
You know, he might get up there and say, I'm choosing the Yankees. But until he has a signed contract, anything can change.
Baltimore selects as the first choice in the draft quarterback John Elway of Stanford.
I'd be surprised to see him play baseball, too. He could be the best in football.
You talk about scary television. Whoever that was in the red jacket is scary.
Oh,
Eli Manning has waited for this opportunity. It's not the opportunity that a lot of people might have sized up about a week ago, but we may know more in the next 15 minutes and the next hour. We may know more right now. Let's head back out to San Diego. Sean Salisbury, a buzz at Chargers headquarters?
Well, you know what? It's still their status quo. They're still drafting Eli Manning as of right now, Boomer. They left, did A.J. Smith, the general manager, and president and CEO, Dean Spanos, and went back from A.J.'s office to that draft room to decide. They're sitting and watching just like you and I are, waiting. And you know what? There's the possibility that they still could, in talking to the Chargers, take Eli Manning, trade him down, and let the Giants draft Philip Rivers, and make that trade. So if it does happen, then we got to wait on that when the Giants are on the clock. But fully expect the San Diego Chargers to use all 15 minutes in waiting to see if somebody else gets into this mix, Boomer.
All right, Sean, well, they are on the clock right now. And, hey, look, let's not forget, Eli Manning's a hell of a football player. Maxwell Award, many awards, Player of the Year, took Ole Miss from where to a big-time bowl game, et cetera, et cetera. Mel, Eli Manning the player.
Chris, what we forget is you don't debate a #1 pick or rate as #1 pick to be a great quarterback. In Eli Manning's case, what he benefited from, and you talk about that name Manning, Archie's influence, I think, is the reason why he stuck around as long as he did at the college level. Keep in mind, he's redshirted in 1999, gradually worked his way into the mix, and as the top-notch SEC quarterback, his completion percentage improved 62.4% as a senior. And you watch him here. He was under pressure. The offensive line, Stacey Andrews, limited background in football. He'll be a 4th-round pick. He was on that offensive line, but overall they struggled. Chris Collins, good receiver, not a lot of speed. Running game, not evident each game in terms of helping out and assisting Eli Manning. That group struggled. I think when you look at the time that he had to throw the football, the lack of a running game, the competition that he faced in the SEC week after week, that's why he was able to achieve such a high grade. Maybe he's not the #1 pick. He's certainly not the consensus #1 pick. He's not the #1 quarterback on some teams' boards. But there's a lot of competition at that spot with Roethlisberger and Rivers. And what Eli Manning did in terms of elevating this Ole Miss football team, you see the throws there, the timing, the precision, which is most important considering the fact he didn't have the great wide receiver core. It's amazing what he was able to do. And I think the fact of the matter is, without Eli Manning, where would Ole Miss have been? They were on the doorstep of upsetting the co-national champion, 1 series away from upsetting the co-national champion LSU Bayou Bengals. You look at what he did throughout his career against that top-level competition. He was an elevator, and I think you got that's
Eli Manning was a stud player in college. He followed in his father's footsteps. Archie Manning, who was his father, who was drafted in the 1971 NFL draft as the 2nd overall pick. His brother, Peyton Manning, was drafted #1 in the 1998 NFL draft. Now let's see if Eli Manning is drafted #1 in this year's draft. Him and his brother, Peyton, they both became 2 of the greatest brothers to play of all time and 2 of the greatest Mannings to play of all time, along with their father. Now let's see if Archie Manning, the son of Cooper Manning, is going to become the next star Manning player. We'll see if the legacy continues on going into the 2027 NFL draft.
His brother,
Manning, Cooper Manning.
Okay, but he's the 3rd quarterback, Manning, and he's handled pressure well. I say he's a Sherlock, and because of the way he handles pressure, that's what makes him the #1 player.
Michael, this is pressure that he's never seen before, and I guarantee it's been created by this buzz the last few days about all of a sudden Eli Manning. They tried in San Diego, I believe, to create a market that wasn't there. You talk about the money you have to pay for a #1 pick at quarterback. You talk about teams' boards being completely different around the NFL. This is a market could not have been created. What San Diego did was complicate matters, Chris. It should have been very simple. They made it complex.
Look, let me boil it down to folks that may not have been following every move of this all week long. I think that the problem is that everybody looks bad here, right or wrong, all right? The Manning family, the first family. I mean, respect of the game, respect the people, absolutely. But yet, they weren't, it didn't appear to be Manning-like. You know, that's the perception. That certainly wasn't their intention, but that might have been what happened. The San Diego Chargers are made to look like all this, like the Beverly Hillbillies. I don't think that's fair. I'll address that in a couple of minutes, but that's a perception out there, and that's not being worn very well out in San Diego, as you might expect. And the NFL, let me go ahead 3 months, okay? If Eli Manning sits, you have the #1 draft pick not playing football, and that's not good for the NFL. Everybody looks bad. Who legitimately looks bad, if anybody, and who actually will come out of this okay?
Well, I think, it's like you said, I think everybody looks bad. There are no winners right now in this situation. The league loses, as you mentioned. Certainly the Chargers lose because now their fans are saying they're bungling this thing. And then, of course, the Mannings lose because they've had such a prestige image in this thing. I do want to address one thing that was asked earlier about to Archie Manning by Susie Colbert, which was Why is this different than the Indianapolis Colts and Peyton Manning? And Archie alluded to it, but he didn't tell you. And simply, what happened then was the Indianapolis Colts had just been taken over in the front office by Bill Polian, who had taken the Buffalo Bills to Super Bowls and had taken the Carolina Panthers to an NFC Championship team. The Mannings have grown up in New Orleans, where the coach at that time was Jim Mora, who turned a losing franchise in New Orleans around into a winning franchise. So in that respect, of course, they had a left tackle, they had Marvin Harrison, so they did see more hope there, certainly.
Well, I mean, that was their read. The Chargers are trying to, look, they feel, look, we just got great news for the first time in a long time on maybe a stadium. There's a step coming in San Diego. We have a pretty darn good running back in LaDainian Tomlinson, maybe the best in football. However, at 4-12, they don't have a lot else, but neither do the Colts. I understand what you're laying out. And by the way, let's not forget, it is Eli's prerogative. Right? It is their prerogative to do what they're doing, like it or not. Now, for example, a couple of years ago, the exact same situation. There are two things tying in here with San Diego. Then let me go up to the EA Sports Desk. 3 years ago, Michael Vick. Well, they traded out of the #1 spot with Atlanta, but the #1 they got instead was this great running back Tomlinson, Tim Dwight, 2 other picks. So let's not forget the Chargers didn't bungle that. Now, 98, Peyton was picked first. They ended with Ryan Leaf, but that's what everybody remembers. This is the team that drafted Ryan Leaf at quarterback. Not fair, but it did happen. Let's go up to Bristol, where we'll be joined all day long with the EA Sports Desk. Trey Wingo and company. Guys, you're ready to roll up there, I know.
More than ready, Boomer. Thanks very much. Welcome into the EA Sports NFL Matchup Set. Trey Wingo here with Merrill and Jaws. And there is not even unanimous decisions here on whether or not Eli Manning is not the best player, but the best quarterback. Is he, Jaws, the best quarterback available in this draft?
He is the best quarterback available in this draft. In all due respect to Ben Roethlisberger and Rivers and Lossman, when you look at Eli Manning, I've studied him extensively. He projects very well to the National Football League. The strong arm, the accurate throws, the mobility, the experience, the ability to manipulate a defense, move secondary, throw the ball down the field. He projects the best out of this group for the NFL.
Right, in your opinion. Now, we watched the tape, and I come away with Philip Rivers being the best quarterback coming out in the draft. When you look at San Diego, the reason they like Philip Rivers, he is most prepared to come out. When you look at his anticipation, his ability to get rid of the football, that's why they like Rivers. The difference here is Philip Rivers doesn't have a dad who played in the National Football League. He doesn't have a brother right now playing in the National Football League. Or Philip Rivers would be the first player picked right now. It wouldn't even be a discussion.
What is wrong with He does have that delivery issue, though. He does have that delivery issue that people are talking about.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with character because I think both these guys have tremendous character.
I agree with
you. But now it's the Manning history that is pulling the weight here. It's not Eli Manning. He is not a consensus guy. He is not John Elway, not even close to John Elway. Rivers is the better quarterback. And feelings got hurt here when San Diego said, we like Philip Rivers. But Manning said, you know what?
Hold on, guys.
So
Hold on.
Here, then we're not going.
Gotcha. One more issue we got to hit here. Is Eli Manning, does he have the right to buck the system the way he is?
No, I don't believe he does. Based on just his overall skills, I don't believe he is that talented. It is because of his dad, his brother, and the power of that name that makes this happen. If Rivers had the same thing, he would be the first player picked, period. Jaws, your thoughts?
I don't agree with bucking the system. But clearly, Eli Manning is the best quarterback. He projects the NFL. The team that does get him, and we don't know who that's going to be right now, he will be a quarterback of that team for a long time.
Why don't you have the right to buck that system? It's the only time maybe in your life you have the hammer. If you got the hammer, you should swing it.
Well, I think there's some validity to that, but I don't think it should be done.
All right, we shall see. Obviously, division on the set, division in the ranks. We don't know what's going on. Boomer, let's send it back to you in New York.
Well, we're about to find what's going on, Trey, and Merrill and Jaws. We look forward to your input. Well, here it is, #1 pick in the 2004 draft. Take a guess.
With the first choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the San Diego Chargers select Eli Manning, quarterback, Mississippi.
Well, a moment that he's dreamt about, that Peyton has lived, and Archie as the #2 pick overall in 71 was as close to, is not quite at this moment what he might have thought. However,
well, here's the thing about this, is in speaking with Archie this
wait a
week.
minute, hold on, Mort. classy move. He's holding up a Charger jersey. Let's notice that.
And visiting with Archie this week, he has expressed this. He hates this for Eli because he knows this is supposed to be the best weekend of his life right now. And he understands that what has come out publicly has spoiled this somewhat for Eli. And now they're trying to do the right thing by the NFL and certainly by Eli as well.
As discussed in the pre-draft period, Eli Manning did not want to go to the Chargers. And this was because of other reasons, but Eli Manning, in which there are many articles out there on it, but Eli Manning, he then was actually, as we know, going to the New York Giants, in which a huge draft day trade happens in this draft. But we'll find that out later.
If I'm Archie and the right situation took succeed, he's already having a lot of pressure put on him. I don't need any added pressure.
Just like his brother, another Manning is drafted #1 overall.
Towards winning and not showing that they're 100% towards winning.
Let me tell you something. We all know this. If Eli ends up a Charger, a Giant, or make a pick, they got themselves a hell of a quarterback. It is now the sixth, and that's his mom, Olivia's dad, Archie. You know what? He may feel like that's a very classy move that we're seeing right there.
It is very classy move.
And you might want to save that picture. It might be a collector's item. I'm at the same thought.
That's exactly right.
6 of the last 7 years, a quarterback now won 4 years in a row. Carson Palmer didn't play at all for Cincinnati last year. He's going to start next year. David Carr 2 years ago certainly looks like a fine player for the Houston Texans. 3 years ago, Michael Vick, he, of course, is, we'll wait to see a healthy Mike Vick this year. 99, Tim Couch, Cleveland, might be a Green Bay Packer before the end of this weekend. Peyton Manning, co-MVP of the league, as good as there is, #1 pick in 98. So even on that list, there's nothing bona fide, yes, and there's nothing bona fide, no. Here's the reaction in San Diego. You see now, he's getting booed all over the country.
Well, that's what's happened with this scenario here, and that's why Archie hates it, because what's happened is that now Eli is a villain. Of course, the San Diego Chargers have identified his agent, Tom Condon, as a villain in this thing as well, and there's a history there.
Go.
And Tom is, and that's what agents do. They have to take a hit, and Tom has had some history with the Chargers on some things. I will also say that the Chargers, when the Manning family has to look at them, they see an ownership that certainly they must question. That's my interpretation of it. They see a general manager in A.J. Smith who hasn't been on board for long, and certainly a coach in Marty Schottenheimer who may be fired by the end of this year if things don't go well. And offensive line receiver issues, obviously.
Well, right. Something that will be debated, but there's no debate. Eli Manning was chosen first in the 2004 draft. 6 years after his brother, Eli is with Susie Colbert. Suze?
Eli, what's this experience been like for you?
First of all, I want to say this is a great honor to be selected as the first pick. It's a great day for the NFL, and it's an important day. So, it's been a fun experience. It's been something I'll always remember, and just being here with my family the past 2 days, it's been really great.
I'm sure when you imagined this, you weren't thinking there'd be boos at Madison Square Garden. How are you handling it all?
I'm doing fine. Obviously, I've dealt with boos before. I've played in a lot of stadiums, with LSUs and fans that'll boo you a lot. So that's just it's just part of the deal.
What are you thinking when you're standing up there with the commissioner and you're holding a Chargers jersey?
Well, obviously, everybody knows how we feel about the situation and what we've said in the past few days. So, obviously, I don't know what else is going to happen from here. I guess right now we just hope that a trade can happen.
So if you had the ultimate right now, you'd be over during the first round, during the course of the day. What do you hope for?
I guess we hope that another team will trade, me to another team for picks, or I don't know how this all works. It's kind of a new territory for me, so I guess I'll sit and wait to see what happens.
No trade happens, then what?
Obviously we've talked about this, and we've told the Chargers how we feel and what will happen if they draft me.
Great day, a tough day. Thanks. Chris.
Eli, Susie, thank you very much. Well, there is some precedent, and we don't mean to say that he would be sitting out 12 months. Bo Jackson, drafted #1 overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in '86. Certainly a franchise at that time that you would have some concerns about. He elected to sit out the whole draft. Went as a 7th-round pick the next year with the Los Angeles Raiders. He was already playing for the Kansas City Royals. John Elway, 1983. You saw the horrifying picture of me 21 years ago. You also saw that Elway, for a few days, Baltimore Colt property with the trade to Denver. Similar, different. Mel, you were in Baltimore.
I was, Chris, and a historical irony. You talk about then general manager of the Baltimore Colts, Ernie Accorsi, drafted John Elway. Always said, I'm not playing for the Colts. I told you I wouldn't. I'm going to play baseball. Well, that summer, Ernie Accorsi was in the process of working out a deal that would have made John Elway a Baltimore Colt. He would have never been a Bronco. The trade by the owner to Denver without his consent created a situation where Elway went to Denver for Chris Hinton, Ron Solt, and Mark Herman. In the case of that situation, John Elway said what he did, but still could have been a Colt. Now you have a situation where Ernie Accorsi, GM of the New York Giants, on the other side of the fence, trying to benefit from a player, Eli Manning, saying, I'm not going to go to San Diego.
The difference here is that Bo Jackson and John Elway had baseball options, and Eli Manning is a football player only.
Correct.
And if he actually has this resolve, we know that economically he doesn't have to sign with the Chargers.
But in reality, John Elway did not have a baseball option.
Well, he had a minor league.
That was a fictional baseball option.
It was fictional. It was fictional. Look, right now Oakland's on the clock, then Arizona, then the New York Giants. If that is the only team, no, anybody could call, but if that's the team that might make a trade for the spot. Look, Philip Rivers, the next quarterback on many boards, although Ben Roethlisberger is here, and other boards, the next quarterback from NC State. He was scouted personally by A.J. Smith, the general manager, midway through the season. A GM going to a team, he's, going to visit. That's different than a scout. He was not originally on the Senior Bowl roster. Marty Schottenheimer was one of the coaches in the Senior Bowl. They lobbied to get him in the roster and on the team. Marty took a look. They came out and loved him afterwards. So it doesn't mean that the Giants trade any offer, change their offer, or make an offer to the Chargers. But we have a chance in the next 40 minutes that there still could be a trade, which would bring Eli to the Giants' territory, Philip Rivers to the Chargers' territory. Come on back.
Build a draft. 2004, Eli Manning request. Pick a winner who passed the test. The game at last to the next names. Yeah.
Welcome back to the NFL Draft. As we look at Madison Square Garden just a few minutes ago, boos for the #1 pick, Eli Manning. Controversy already. I am Andrea Kramer at the Players Roundtable, and I am joined by my roster of amateur general managers, Kyle Bowler from the Baltimore Ravens, Corey Chavis, Minnesota Vikings, Takeo Spikes, Buffalo Bills, and John Jansen from the Washington Redskins. Gentlemen, as you watched the image of Eli Manning, a very unhappy Eli Manning, what were your thoughts?
Well, it's unfortunate that he put himself in this position just because it should be the biggest day of his life. He's going to sign a contract that is going to set him up for the rest of his life, his family. Obviously, they're doing well as it is with Peyton and everybody, but he's the #1 pick. He's the #1 option that everybody wanted in this draft. He should be happy as can be.
All right, John, we will be back at the roundtable for much more opinion, but right now let's head back to New York where the pick is in for the Oakland Raiders.
All right, Andrea, thank you very much. The Oakland Raiders are on the clock. This has been a hot spot. Cleveland in particular may be offering a 2 or 4 or something else to move up. We'll tell you why. There are 5 or 6 special players right here. Who do the Raiders like?
With the second choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders select Robert Gallery, offensive tackle, Iowa.
Well, let me just put one thing in for a moment backwards. That might make the New York Giants San Diego trade a little more possible. It might. I'm just going to say that. Robert Gallery, we haven't even talked about him. He is one of the best tackles rated in a long time. Up there, Mel, with what? Tony Baselli, Jonathan Ogden, Orlando Pace. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. And I think when you look at Robert Gallery, also they say safe pick. Well, safe pick for the reasons that the tackles you mentioned, Chris, have had outstanding careers. Not to mention top guys like Trey Thomas out of Florida State with the Eagles, Walter Jones in Seattle. Keep in mind, Jordan Gross started all year in Carolina, Super Bowl team. So I think teams feel, hey, when we take an offensive tackle in the left tackle, we get an immediate return more on our investment. We can plug him right in, and he is a safe pick. And when you look at the highlight package of Robert Gallery, you see a destructive defensive force. Kirk Ferentz, the head coach at Iowa, does a remarkable job. He's an offensive line guru, and I think when you look at Robert Gallery, a former tight end, becoming a great left tackle, a lot of that had to do with Kirk Ferentz and the way he was coached.
How about from the farms of Iowa to the second pick in the NFL draft?
But is he Tony Baselli? Is he Jonathan Ogden?
I think when you look at Ogden, I think he's got a chance to be that good. Is he Ogden as a player? No, he's a different style of player. This is a rugged offensive tackle, rugged left tackle. As I said, a former tight end who grew into the position. Very strong, tremendously mobile, and very tough. I tell you, this is a kid who did a heck of a job on the defensive side of the ball in high school as well as the offensive side. You look at the experience that he gained at Iowa in that style of offense, and you watch him here, number 78, the feet, the balance that he has, the ability to not just get your guy, but move on and assist that running back, Fred Russell, as he did. And you saw Fred Russell here, number 2, have a number of big runs. A lot of it had to do with Robert Gallery and his dominance. You saw him against Will Smith from Ohio State. You saw him against some elite defensive ends get the job done. And this kid never really had an off game. He was All-American week in and week out. And I think Robert Gallery's dominance on a consistent basis is why he achieved such a high grade. As I said, on a par, no question about it, with Ogden, Pace, Baselli, and Samuels. Robert Gallery will be expected. And history has proven it will happen. A left tackle moves in right away and starts from day one.
Raiders?
I love the pick. I absolutely love the pick. The Raiders are so used to going after.
Now the Cardinals would go on to select a Hall of Fame wide receiver with this pick here. And this player was actually a ball boy for Randy Moss when he was on the Vikings. And this player that was drafted with the 3rd pick would go on to play in the Super Bowl for the Cardinals and would go on to have a great and amazing wide receiver career, being one of the top wide receivers in NFL history. And he was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame more recently, and he was just an incredible wide receiver.
We don't know how he plays. Norv Turner is a big down-the-field type guy, and you've told me it starts with the quarterback. Why not?
He's a big quarterback guy. So what does that say? He doesn't see a quarterback that he loves in here. He's going to wait, maybe find his quarterback later. When he sees offensive tackle, they needs to protect that quarterback, and that's the guy I get.
Mike identified some of the big changes literally for the Oakland Raiders, including the big guys on defense and the new coach. Raiders, a year removed from the Super Bowl, have the 2nd-round pick. Which team are they? Arizona, when we come back.
Yeah!
In the National Football League College Draft.
Eli Manning, Kevin Jones, Sean Taylor, Kevin Winslow Jr. Giants? Chargers. Redskins make a blockbuster deal. What? The Redskins? Who, the Skins? Don't you mean the Cardinals? Or the Lions? Chargers, Giants, Chargers, Giants, Chargers, Giants. I thought the Redskins got the first pick. Redskins? Man, I heard it was the Giants. What happened to the Chargers?
The NFL Draft Day hat. Make it your #1 pick.
In this competition, there's no room to lose. So facing the opposition is what I'ma do. I got 24 seconds to live, and 200% is what I'm gonna give. So I push through the pain and raise my game. A victory is the only thing to gain. So I take it to the hole, drive it up your lane. I do it for the love, do it for the game. Even though I'm playing the game, I ain't playing. The trophy is the reason I can. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started.
Welcome back to New York with the Arizona Cardinals on the clock. And the Arizona Cardinals and their fans, and when you think about Arizona, think a lot more than just who they're going to pick in the first of the Denny Green era. In 2001, Pat Tillman was completing his 4th season as safety for the Arizona Cardinals. Here was a man that had a chance to sign a 5-year deal for $9+ million with the St. Louis Rams, decided, I'm loyal to Arizona. They're the team that drafted me. I'll play for less money. Then, after 9/11, here in New York and elsewhere around the country, he decided at the end of the season, football was not his calling. His country was the calling. So he turned down multi-million-dollar contract to play safety for the Cardinals in a state that he loved and the game that he loved, to serve with the U.S. Army Rangers. When he enlisted in the Army, along with his brother, he turned down all interview requests because he said, I am no more important than any other man or woman serving in the service, whether in peacetime or in wartime. I don't want to bring any attention to myself. That was the man that Pat Tillman was, and of course we heard the news on Thursday night, killed in action in Afghanistan. Chris Connolly remembers.
What does a hero look like?
From his earliest days in big-time football at Arizona State, Pat Tillman was an overachiever, admired for making the most of his physical skills, his smarts, and his aggressiveness. If his achievements in the NFL made liars out of those who doubted his ability to compete at that level, his decision to leave the game he played to serve the nation he loved made liars out of us all of us in sports, who casually invoke such concepts as sacrifice, selflessness, and dedication. Hip deep in a culture that prizes cold cash and fame's heat, Pat Tillman turned his back on them both to embrace the values of what sometimes sounds like a different era entirely: duty, honor, country. In life, he sought out challenges and met them head on. In death, he may have performed one final service for his fellow soldiers and for America by reminding us all that every man and woman who has fallen in that theater of battle also has a face and a story that must not be forgotten. We honor his memory by thinking of them, for Pat Tillman's death has given their bravery a new life. What does a hero look like? Maybe you have to lose one to know that you've found one.
New York as a poignant, to say the very least. Pat Tillman will be on our minds today, tomorrow, all year, and every year. The Arizona Cardinals, there'll be nobody wearing number 40 again at Arizona. There will be nobody wearing 40 at Arizona State. And as we say, everybody drafted today, we hope they can live up to the man that Pat Tillman was. Arizona and Denny Green's first pick.
Third choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver, University of Pittsburgh.
Now let's go to Arizona and a wonderful story. A wonderful story. Larry Fitzgerald was a ball boy with the Minnesota Vikings. Denny Green, as Viking coach, knew him when he was 8 years old. He's been friends of the family. Mr. Fitzgerald, a newspaper report, sports reporter, radio host in Minnesota. You talk about scouting a player. Denny Green has scouted him for 15 years. Larry Fitzgerald, amazing.
And I think when you look at Larry, he was the #1 player on my board. I think when you look at Larry, 6'3", 225, I had a chance to meet him this year. We were at the Virginia Tech Pitt game with College Game Day. And I think when you look at Larry Fitzgerald, you see a kid big, and he has that Lynn Swann ability to be that acrobat and have that body control and the work ethic of a Jerry Rice. And you see the ability there. When that ball's in the air, it's his. I think people talk about, hey, he's got to get off the jam. He's got off that press coverage. Yeah, he can work on some things, but he's going to put the time in on the practice field to do it. Yes, I think Arizona had needs above wide receiver, but keep in mind, Denny Green's going to attack with 3 wides. He's got Anquan Bolden, Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's got Bryant Johnson, and now he has a Larry Fitzgerald, who's 6'3", 225, presents coverage matchups when you can attack with those 3 guys. And at Minnesota, he had Chris Carter, he had Jake Reed, then he brought Randy Moss into the fold. So Denny Green, you think, hey, why not quarterback? Denny Green really is ecstatic about the potential of Josh McCown. Josh McCown played well in those last 4 games. The game against Minnesota, touchdown pass from Nate Poole, knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs. Denny Green's pet project now is making Josh McCown an effective starting quarterback. Culpepper was in his 2nd year when Denny gave him the reins. McCown's going into his 2nd year, and he will have 3 wide receivers. Granted, they're young. Bolden's proven. Johnson needs to improve. Fitzgerald will play as a rookie and play a major role. Marcel Shipp's in the backfield. And I think 2nd round on, they will address the defensive needs that they have.
Now, listen, another storyline which is shoved aside, and we're going to get to these 6 special players, is that we will have maybe a dozen receivers picked in the first 2 rounds. Mike, Larry Fitzgerald, I mean, is he an acrobat up there catching the ball?
Man, he's Poole, I'm telling you, he has the best hands I have seen since who? Chris Carter. Another guy.
Now, this pick here is where things get crazy. The Giants would actually go on to select a quarterback, but it wasn't Eli Manning. it was a different quarterback who actually played in the NFL as a grandpa this year at the age of 44 years old. I know, crazy. But this draft day trade that would happen after this pick goes would just be a crazy trade, and just showed how, like, this changed the trajectory of all of NFL history, and how the Chargers would get a different quarterback, and how the Giants would get a different quarterback, and how quarterbacks were swapped in this draft. And this draft day trade that happened are going to be one of the biggest draft day trades of all time.
It means a lot to Dennis Green. He knows exactly what he's getting with Larry Fitzgerald.
Absolutely. Larry Fitzgerald, I know he knows, and I like Larry Fitzgerald as a wide receiver, but I also know the mentality of a wide receiver. And you have an Anquan Bolt who has played well for you, overly well. He caught over 100 receptions last year. You have Brian Johnson right there, who you drafted in the first round last year also. So with that, I don't take Larry Fitzgerald because I don't want to mess with
Well, that's what I'm saying. Wouldn't Roy Williams have been a Randy Moss type to complement Bolden? Aren't Bolden and Fitzgerald similar guys?
Right, but that's too much of a luxury for Arizona. They don't have that luxury. You go get you a defensive player like Sean Taylor, and you let Anquan Bolt do what he does
both
best.
Special players.
They are both special players.
And after all, the Arizona Cardinals scored the fewest points in football. They allowed the most. One of the reasons that Denny Green is the new head coach. A year ago, he was sitting in Michael's seat. The head coach next year, obviously. Well, the New York Giants are now on the clock, and maybe, just maybe, there's some drama. Don't know. Maybe Sal Palantonio knows. Let's go across the river about 8 miles to Sal with the Giants. Sal?
Boomer, while the Arizona Cardinals were on the clock, the Giants confirmed to us from their draft room that if Philip Rivers, the quarterback from North Carolina State, was sitting at number 4, there would be discussions with the San Diego Chargers that the Giants would take Rivers and then swap quarterbacks with the Chargers, and that the Giants would eventually wind up with Eli Manning. We can only assume that those discussions are taking place right now, Boomer.
Well, that's what we thank you, Sal. And we said as soon as Gallery was picked, because that was the player that the Giants were talking about all along also, that might help a trade in, I don't know, 10 minutes or...
Well, this is a very interesting spot because the Giants have Ben Roethlisberger rated over Philip Rivers. So they have to take their best shot right now with the Chargers in order to do this. But otherwise, with Roethlisberger there, I guarantee you, as Kellen Winslow and Sean Taylor of the University of Miami sit there, that the Cleveland Browns are also in this picture trying to get into the Giant spot, and maybe another team or two, because Winslow and Taylor are big-time players, and Roethlisberger probably could be had a couple of slots down. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
What else might... Look, I mean, those are enough scenarios, Mel. Gallery gone. Who would be the next just player? Let's forget everything else. Next player, because we really haven't gotten into... Maybe we can. Sean Taylor is one of the highest-rated safeties in a long time. Kellen Winslow, the second, one of the highest-rated tight ends in a long time. Larry Fitzgerald and Roy Williams, Mike and the guys just talked about. Gallery, one of the highest-rated tackles in a long time. You don't see this that often, all in one draft at the top, Mel.
They're the big 6, and they're all these guys that you see are number 1 on some teams' draft boards. And we've already had Manning and Gallery and Fitzgerald gone. We still have 3 remaining: Kellen Winslow, Roy Williams, and Sean Taylor. And that's why you have this jockeying for position, as Mort said, because some of these guys, all these guys, are number 1 on somebody's draft board. And that's a rarity. When you get to that 6th spot, you can still get a guy that's number 1 on their board. Right. That doesn't happen often, Chris.
And so, Giants 4, Washington 5, Detroit 6, Cleveland is at 7, others a little bit below. Therefore, the top 6 are your premium spots. So, we're looking at the trade from San Diego to New York. Maybe. There may be others. We didn't think this would be the fastest moving first hour because there are lots of phone lines buzzing. So, do you agree that these are the... I mean, look, I'm not saying that Roy Williams, the safety, who Dallas has, isn't equal. I'm not saying Sean Taylor is better or Kellen Winslow, but these grades are about as good as we've seen.
Well,
right?
there are those 6 premium players that Mel has talked about. But the other thing that's happened that'll make a lot of players, teams happy, is that we are seeing Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger probably go, or Rivers here, which slides those guys down another notch or two. So a lot of teams that we're picking 7, 8, 9, 10 and on down, we're hoping the quarterbacks would go early, and we're going to see at least 2 go early, maybe 3.
Well, and maybe 3. And another storyline, and there's Ben, Miami of Ohio, a guy that many say, just let him sit and watch for a little bit. and he may have the best side of all of them. So you do get the different opinions, and it's exciting, and you may see J.P. Lossman, I expect, quarterback in the first round, probably four first-round quarterbacks, probably 6, 7 wide receivers. Not a lot of offensive tackles. There are a couple of running backs, so it's heavy at the top, and then there's the next little group of 6 or 7 players, and then who knows?
I tell you, those 2 Miami players, Winslow and Taylor, are coveted by a lot of teams. And I'm telling you, there is talk right now, as you mentioned, about those players. Kellen Winslow is the top-rated player on a lot of draft boards, period.
Well, I think you've already seen what other tight ends that may not even have the ability that Kellen Winslow have done. Tony Gonzalez, certainly Jeremy Shockey, and Todd Heap. Todd Heap has been tremendously effective in that Raven offense. So they're much more than tight ends. Ernie, of course, he made that point when he drafted Jeremy Shockey. He said, hey, if he was a tight end, it wouldn't have been our pick. He's much more than a tight end. He can expand your offense. Kellen Winslow can do just that. Sean Taylor is a destructive force in that secondary. If he was just a safety who had ability, fine. Ed Reed had a lot of ability. He dropped to 24-25. This kid brings a Ray Lewis passion, and Ray Lewis has helped to make Ed Reed the great player he is in Baltimore.
This is Sean Taylor, one of the men, and he is with friends and in Miami. You saw that at a gathering, and it will soon be a party. Right now, it's not yet a party. But let me just change for a little bit because we have 6 minutes left with the Giants. You draft early in the draft, therefore you had a bad season. Therefore, 7 new coaches in the NFL. Many are coming up right now. Jim Fossil did a nice job, took the Giants in the Super Bowl a few years back, but last year was a downer to say the least, and now Tom Coughlin is in. Are the Giants a contender for the playoffs again, or are they in a rebuilding mode, guys?
Tom, they've had a terrific season, I think, in picking up value-free agents, and Tom Coughlin, I don't see him taking 3 years to turn this thing around. I see a quicker turnaround there.
Let me ask you this, Morton. I think a lot of people in our audience are asking this question. Why is a trade now being consummated possibly when it could have been done before the pick was made, number 1 overall?
If it's a trade, hey, listen, it's true. Now, maybe it's the Chargers, but I'm telling you, if there's a trade here, do not rule out the Browns, who covet Gallery, who's gone, Robert Gallery, and they covet Kellen Winslow. The Houston Texans might covet a guy like Sean Taylor. So I say, you watch. If there's a trade here, it isn't necessarily the Chargers.
Correct.
It could be some of these other.
Well, I don't know what it means. Sean Taylor's been on the phone with quite a few teams back in the green room in the last 5 minutes. Now, that could mean that he likes to use the phone. And,
his mother's with him.
Well, not in the green room. That is gathering in Miami. So maybe what you say is correct. Giants could go down, which, by the way, still leaves a Rivers scenario alive. I don't know, right? What a trade.
Anything goes right now. Anything goes right now. With the way it fell, with Manning and Gallery going right off the top, and Fitzgerald, right now, there is a lot of phone activity going on between various draft rooms.
And the 2 players, Chris, that were really associated with the Giants, Eli Manning and Robert Gallery, they're gone. Ben Roethlisberger's names come up. You have some other great players there. The Giants looking at possibly moving down. But I think scenarios like a lot of Giants fans hope would have happened have not yet. Gallery is a Raider, and right now Eli Manning is a Charger. So we have to wait and see how that shakes down as we move on. But if you're going to work out a deal, deals have been done. This isn't the NBA draft. This is the NFL, and we haven't had many opportunities to see a player drafted and for another team like you do in the NBA.
You know, just an aside, you know, and a lot of people haven't really focused on football for a while. NFC East, you had Joe Gibbs in Washington. You get Bill Parcells in his second year with Dallas. You got Tom Coughlin, who certainly has been around the block with the New York Giants. So here's Andy Reid with Philadelphia, who's gone to 3 straight title games. He's coaching in NFL coaching fantasy camp. I mean, all of a sudden, he's junior again.
It's almost like the old NFC East when there was Parcells, of course, in New York. You had Joe Gibbs in Washington. You had Buddy Ryan in Philadelphia. And then Jimmy Johnson came on in Dallas, taking over for Tom Landry.
I mean, look, this is, you talk, I don't think you're going to slip one past the coaching staffs in this division.
No, very competitive division, and it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out because all those coaches are as highly competitive and as good at evaluating talent, not just coaching talent.
And look for all those coaches, Tom Coughlin being a quick turnaround in New York. New York has talent. All they needed was somebody to push them in the right direction. Tom Coughlin will do that.
Well, here's the first push. The Giants have made a pick. Let's go up to the commission.
Cleveland. Never know.
With the fourth pick in the 2004 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Philip Rivers, quarterback, North Carolina State.
As we told you, what did we tell you? As soon as Gallery was gone, now, this doesn't mean there's a deal.
Well, no,
it's got to be
listen,
one.
it tells me there is a deal because the Giants, from what I understand, had Ben Roethlisberger rated over Philip Rivers. Now, maybe that was bad information, but at the same time, by taking Rivers, it tells you there is a significant trade here in the works between the Chargers and the New York Giants.
Philip Rivers, a name that not many knew because you play football at NC State. Only Roman Gabriel and Eric Kramer have been signal callers in the NFL from the Wolfpack now.
Exactly. I think when you look at Philip Rivers, I saw a lot of Bernie Kosar in Philip Rivers, and you say, okay, who coached Bernie Kosar when he came out of Miami in the supplemental draft? Marty Schottenheimer. And I always thought that in San Diego, and we talked about it, it's not that complicated. You either take your guy or you trade down. And if you're debating both and you're waffling back and forth, that's not the way to do it.
Who was the general manager in Cleveland when they did Kosar?
Ernie Accorsi.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think when you look at Philip Rivers, you see that ability, that cerebral approach, and everybody said, well, it's unorthodox delivery. His arm strength is questionable. You're looking at passes here, and you tell me if his arm strength is suspect. This kid has that quick release, even though it's low. Not many passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. 4-0 in bowl games. 5-0 if you count MVP performance at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. Came back on the plane with Philip, his wife, and his child. Mature kid, a kid who was the guy. Remember, he came in spring practice prior to his freshman year. It seemed like he was in college forever. And I think when you look at his track record of success, the fact that he didn't have his left tackle, Chris Colmer, one of his top receivers, Sterling Hicks, and T.A. McClendon, their fine running back, was in and out of the lineup, yet he put up huge numbers, completing over 70% of his passes. Philip Rivers, I think, will have a career in the NFL similar to Bernie Kosar. You guys like Bernie, you'll like Philip.
That'd be pretty good. Yeah, who cares if the throwing motion isn't picture perfect? All right, now are we going? We have Philip Rivers here in the green room. Let's go
actually,
first.
Philip decided not to make this trip, I believe.
All right, let's go to Sean Salisbury in San Diego. We suggested, Sean, once Gallery went, that might sweeten the possibility of a deal. Has it?
Yeah, Boomer, the talk now with the San Diego Chargers that there's a definite possibility there could be a trade. The parameters they don't know about yet, but I expect now with the Philip Rivers and Eli Manning situation that you will see something happen with the Giants and with the San Diego Chargers, which begs the question, Sal Palantonio, if the Chargers like Philip Rivers from the beginning, why in the world didn't they take him?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, obviously the Giants want Eli Manning. That was the first guy that they had targeted all along. We heard early on that once Larry Fitzgerald went to the Arizona Cardinals, that there would be discussions between the Giants and the Chargers. We can only assume those discussions are ongoing, and we will hear shortly, I hope, from Ernie Accorsi. It's back to you, Boomer.
All right, Sal, thank you very much. Philip Rivers is here.
After this huge pick just happened, and would soon after this pick with the huge draft day trade that would happen, Washington would go on to select a defensive back who would go on to have a great career in the NFL.
Rivers joins us from his parents' home in Raleigh. He did decide not to come here to New York. So, Philip, what have you been hearing today?
I can't.
Philip, what have you been...
I've been right here at home. I've been right here at home with the family in Raleigh and just kind of waiting. I'm excited.
What have you been hearing? We know you've been on the phone. What are the teams telling you?
Well, I hadn't gotten a call yet from anybody. I'm just excited, you know, as of right now to be a Giant, and I don't know how everything's going to play out, but I'll be excited to see what happens.
There's been so much talk of possible trade. San Diego, New York Giants. We know that Marty Schottenheimer and the coaching staff there in San Diego loved what they saw of you on tape. How would you feel about playing for the Chargers?
You know, I'm going to be excited wherever it is. You know, as of right now, I'm approaching it like I'm going to be a Giant, and if that's the place, I'll be excited to be there and be a part of that team. And if it ends up being somewhere else, I'll be excited too. I hadn't heard anything yet other than what all y'all are saying, so I'll just be excited to see what's for sure.
Philip, there's been so much talk about the unorthodox delivery. What's your message for the NFL?
Well, I just think that there's been a lot of talk about it, but it gradually decreased throughout the season and throughout the Combine and the Senior Bowl, and I don't think it's going to be an issue, and that's kind of the feeling I get from most teams, and you know, hopefully the Giants feel that same way, and things will work for a long time.
Philip, we'll keep in touch with you. Right now, let's go to Ed Werder in Washington. Ed?
Thanks, Susie. You know, Joe Gibbs making his first draft choice in 12 years, and it may be the only one he makes all day because they have really tried to bolster their offense to the detriment of their drafts. They only have one pick today. It's this pick. It's because they traded for Clinton Portis, giving up a 2. They traded for quarterback Mark Brunell, and Joe Gibbs told me he feels like Kellen Winslow, the tight end, could really put this offense over the top. He says it's the kind of guy he's never had before at this H-back position, and that they consciously did not, in free agency, as active as they were, did not sign a safety or a tight end because they like the 2 Miami players, Sean Taylor, the safety, and Kellen Winslow, the tight end. The 2 players are rated so closely here, in fact, that Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator, told me he went into a meeting this morning still thinking he could convince Joe Gibbs to take the defensive player Taylor, but I am told they are leaning heavily toward Winslow at this point because he's told his coaches Winslow is just a unique player. And remember, he coached his father when he was at San Diego, changed his entire way of playing offense because he had Kellen Winslow, the original, the Hall of Fame tight end. Boomer, back to you.
All right, Ed, thank you. One little note on the Giants. What a proud day for the Rivers family there. You know, wherever he ends up, he's the 4th pick in the draft. If Giant fans like that twang just a little bit, last time they picked a quarterback in the 1st round, 1979, a little bit of twang, Phil Simms, that turned out all right. So whether it's Rivers, whether it's Manning, whether it's whoever it might be, the Giants, now, one little question, but I'll get the answer when I come back. If it's Rivers or Manning, with or Kerry Collins, just something to throw out as we anticipate the Skins, the Lions, the Browns, and the upper echelon of this draft.
ESPN's exclusive coverage of the NFL Draft is presented by Rocky Mountain Cold Coors Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL, and in part by Nissan, who invites you to shift the way you move through the world, and Lowe's, where you'll find all your home improvement needs. Lowe's, improving home improvement.
Now, a beautiful day in New York, and certainly a wild early afternoon here in the Big Apple in the theater inside Madison Square Garden. Manning, Gallery, Fitzgerald, Rivers, gone 1, 2, 3, 4. Where they end, we still don't know. Now, Washington, Detroit, Cleveland, those players you heard Ed mention, what will be burning the phone lines now?
Well, actually, let's go back to what was burning the phone lines. Frame some of that drama while the Giants were on the clock. I am told that the Cleveland Browns thought they had a trade worked out with the Giants to go up to that number 4 spot and take Kellen Winslow. When the Giants pulled out at the last second, clearly with something heating up there with the Chargers over Philip Rivers. And interesting that Rivers said, oh, by the way, nobody's called me, because if it were, you always get a call from the team you're going to be playing with.
Very good point.
Okay.
But now we're on to Washington with Joe Gibbs' first round pick in 12 years. And the commissioner, a one-time season ticket holder of the Washington Redskins when he was a lawyer in the nation's capital. He's been the commissioner a long time, but you always have an extra eye open for what your team might do.
With the 5th pick in the 2004 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Sean Taylor, safety, University of Miami.
Thought so. And hello, Detroit.
Just a little background on this.
Yep.
When the Redskins held when Joe Gibbs ran a personnel meeting on Friday.
The San Diego Chargers and the New York Giants have exchanged their draft picks.
I got a great question to ask.
Eli Manning and Philip Rivers. And also the Giants are assigning to the Chargers their 3rd round pick in this draft and their 1st and 3rd round picks in next year's draft. The Detroit Lions are on the clock.
Well,
I'll take it.
Well then. And as Jackson Brown once sang, when you hear that crowd and you see those lights, you remember why you came. Told you. One gallery, I think, was the final part of that. Let me put what I know, okay? You just heard what the commissioner said. They've traded quarterbacks, okay? So they get a 3 this year, does San Diego, and a 1 and a 3 next year. San Diego, let me take it from their angle with what I know, was out to get better than the Vic trade of 3 years ago. And what that trade was from 1 to 5, this is 1 to 4, for a #1 pick, which they got. They picked Tomlinson with Atlanta. They picked a 2 next year, a 3 that year, and a pretty good player in Tim Dwight. Hold on.
First and 5th round picks, not the 3rd round pick.
However, but the big number is here, Mel and Mort, a 1 next year, which the Giants don't expect to be this high, of course, but you don't know.
Right.
So San Diego may have indeed gotten something comparable or a little better than the Vic. I don't know.
I think San Diego capitulated a little bit here.
Well, sure they did.
It is not the trade of the century that they had been framing, and it just tells me that they came to their senses thinking, we do have an equal grade on Philip Rivers, and why go through the mess we're about to go through?
What they did was reach for the sky, and it fell a little short, and they should be happy with their draft.
Here it is.
Now here's the huge trade that happened during this draft day. It was going to be one of the most historic draft day trades of all time. Probably like the most historic draft day trade of all time. Next to like the Ricky Williams trade, to where the Chargers get the rights to quarterback Philip Rivers, so basically swapping quarterbacks. The Chargers now Philip Rivers, 2004 3rd round pick and the 2005 1st and 5th round pick, and now the Giants, they have the rights to QB Eli Manning. So now Eli Manning is on the New York Giants and Philip Rivers is on the Chargers, and this was just like a huge trade. It would change all NFL history to where Eli Manning would go to Super Bowls with the Giants, and Philip Rivers would go on to have a great career with the Chargers. And I think these two players are both Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and this would just change the trajectory of NFL history for the times to come.
What is that 1st round pick next year? How high is that pick? If the Giants are picking in the 20s, or are they picking in the top 5? That remains to be seen how the Giants, turn this thing around, how quickly they get back on track this coming year.
Clearly, next year's #1 was the key because Ernie, of course, he would not give up. He's the general manager of the Giants, of course, would not give up this year's 2nd round pick. I think that's really what the Chargers had wanted, but a #1 next year obviously did the trick.
And also the comments, I think, when you talked about Dean Spanos yesterday, Morton said, okay, our entire draft this year and a 1st round pick next year. Well, they didn't get as much as they said they wanted for a guy that they said was one of the elite quarterbacks coming out of all time.
There were a lot of emotions, and there was a lot of anger, and I think people had to sleep another night on it.
And cooler heads prevailed. Look, so Eli Manning property Giants, Philip Rivers property San Diego. The man that engineered this trade right across the river for the Giants is Ernie Accorsi, the general manager, who was certainly involved, as Mel pointed out, with the Baltimore Colts. On another end, when John Elway was picked by Baltimore, said he didn't want to go there. It took a few days. Elway went to the Denver Broncos for a very good player, Chris Hinton, the veteran quarterback, Mark Herman. That's ancient history now. Everybody's on the other side of the tracks. And I just throw out, I know a lot has happened in a hurry, but just, you think both Rivers and Manning could come right in and start. Rivers very well may in San Diego, which then might end the Drew Brees era. They have Doug Flutie as backup. New York, they have a guy that took them to the Super Bowl, Kerry Collins, albeit a few years ago. Would Eli Manning, like Peyton, come in and take the first snap in week 1? That would be something that we would have to see. So, I'm just putting everything on a fast track, but boy, there was some fast tracks the last half hour, right? Ernie's not ready yet. We're going to go out to the Giants in a moment. Mort?
Well, one thing you're saying, we are seeing Ben Roethlisberger on the phone right now, which means somebody probably is trying to trade up there and maneuver up into this spot with Detroit. Well, we'll see what happens on that one. All I can tell you is, in terms of this trade with Eli Manning and Kerry Collins, as you mentioned, I've been told that Tom Coughlin is determined to play if he took Eli Manning from day 1. It tells me
that's shocking.
Now, Tom hasn't been quoted on that. That would tell me that Kerry Collins is headed out of New York, because there's no way they're going to have him back up Eli. That's based on what I've heard, not what he has told me.
Save $100 on the Troy-Bilt Bronco 46 riding mower. Ride in comfort with an adjustable seat and step-through frame for easy on and off access. Maneuver easily around trees and beds, and help protect your lawn from turf damage with anti-scalp deck wheels. Take the hard work out of yard work and enjoy $100 savings. Now through June 12th. Shop now and visit TroyBuilt.com for details.
You hear stuff sometimes.
It all just happened. All right, now we told you that the Giants have taken Phil Simms, and that's been a long while, 25 years ago. It's the third longest drought, and see how the names keep coming around. Ernie Accorsi, Elway. Archie Manning was still the last quarterback drafted in the first round by the New Orleans Saints. You saw Bill Munson. Well, I mean, that's a long time ago. Phil Simms took the Giants and led the
Now,
Giants
this pick
to
would
their
actually be
first
traded to
Super
the
Bowl
Cleveland
in
Browns, in which they would
1986.
select
It
the
was
tight
7
end,
years later.
and then the
Phil
Lions would
Simms,
actually
we
have
got
the
to know
7th pick,
even
so they
better,
basically just
worked
traded
with us.
back one spot.
We're moving on.
But I also want to bring something up else as well. Another quarterback was also drafted in this draft. He went with the 11th overall pick, and he would go on to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You probably know this quarterback, and he would lead the Steelers to multiple Super Bowls. And he came out of the MAC conference, and this quarterback was just a stellar player, and he would go for the 11th pick in this draft, and it was just huge. This draft was this was a historic draft that happened here, especially for quarterbacks, and this was just a huge draft for all the NFL history.
I mean, he didn't want to spill all the beans right there in that interview to Sal, apparently, Mel. Maybe only you can get the information out of him.
Well, I think when you look at Ernie, I think he's happy with the fact he got his young quarterback. I think nobody prioritizes young quarterbacks who have elite skills, and we can debate whether Manning has elite skills more than Ernie Accorsi does. As I said, you look at John Elway, he would have been a Colt if it was up to Ernie Accorsi. Unfortunately, it wasn't. The owner made that deal, not Ernie. So I think you look at this opportunity. If you're picking down the line, you're not going to be able to make this trade. By picking 4th, and they hope it's an aberration, they were able to make this deal. And I think that's a lot of teams now are getting away from the young quarterbacks. Ernie Accorsi never will.
All right, look, here's a little trick of the trade. It's live TV. These things happen. Sal, caught in mid-sentence, now finishes the sentence with Ernie Accorsi.
Thanks, Boomer. I am with Ernie Accorsi, the GM. We had a little technical difficulty there. Ernie, go back and tell us what the parameters of the draft, of the trade were.
Sal, the trade was Philiprivers for Eli Manning, and we gave San Diego our 3rd this year and our 1st and 5th next year, not our 1st and 3rd.
Why Eli Manning? Why was it so important for him to be in a Giants uniform?
Well, we all kind of had a unanimous opinion that this was a special quarterback. You know, you don't get a chance very many times for a decade to be able to select someone like him. We scouted him heavily as a junior because we weren't sure that he might come out. We tracked him this year, and I think we all felt that this was a quarterback that, that you wait for a long time, and we're just thrilled to have him.
What were the discussions when San Diego was on the clock at the beginning of the first round there, and why didn't the trade happen then?
Well, we really never had any discussions. We only had a discussion when they, we decided to pick Rivers, and we had our reasons, sure, we thought maybe, possibly that could interest some clubs, and if not, we had a pretty good quarterback for as far as we were concerned. We loved him, and then the discussions began after that.
New head coach here, Tom Coughlin. You're starting over with basically just a re-energizing of the franchise. Where do you see Eli fitting in as a starting quarterback here at some point, and what happens to Kerry Collins now?
Well, first.
Well, yeah. We'll try and get him live next time. Maybe that'll be the way to go. But Ernie's certainly very busy and was gracious to come out. So, Detroit is on the clock, but we understand there's a trade with the team right below them, the Cleveland Browns. We can explain that to you in a moment. We're pretty much sure why. But right now, how about Sean Taylor? Huh? He's as high a safety as you've graded the last 15 years?
In the end, Chris, yes, he was. And I think in the end, I think it's about that lineage at Miami. You go back to Benny Blades, Darrell Williams, and Ed Reed, and the level he took that position to at Miami. And the fact of the matter is, at 6'2.5", 227 pounds, can run like a corner, and he's that tough physical safety, everybody compared to Ronnie Lott. And I think you look at this division, what Joe Gibbs and the Redskins have to deal with in Jeremy Shockey. It's expressed to me that, hey, we have a guy in Sean Taylor now for the Redskins that can match up against Jeremy Shockey and negate all the skills that he brings to the table. So this is a guy who has multi-dimensional talent. And I've said it before when we're discussing the Elite Six players, the passion for the game of a Ray Lewis, and Ray Lewis single-handedly elevated that Raven football team, not just the defense. I think the Redskins hope that he will make everybody around him better. That's a sign of a truly great player, and because of that, a safety, normally not this high, that's a special quality I believe allowed Sean Taylor to go up, and the fact he had 10 INTs and 13 pass breakups. This guy is a ball hawk in that secondary. When he comes through with the interception, a former running back in high school, he can do some damage. He can get you great field position or take it all the way for the touchdown. This kid is thinking big play all the time. He's a little sloppy tackling this past year. Shoulder injury. Quincy Wilson, West Virginia, did a good job breaking tackles. That's not the normal Sean Taylor. When he's at 100%, he's healthy. He is a complete player, and he is going to add to a defense. It already has Cornelius Griffin, Marcus Washington linebacker, and Sean Springs cornerback coming in through free agency.
And just for Michael, he's from the U. He's from the University of Miami, one of what could be a record-breaking 6 first-round selections we could have. We told you Detroit and Cleveland were cooking something. Here it is. Can you smell what the Lions and Browns have been cooking?
With the 6th pick in the 2004 NFL Draft acquired from the Detroit Lions, the Cleveland Browns select Kellen Winslow, tight end, University of Miami.
Well, we'll get the details on the trade in a minute. I will tell you one thing, Mort, that Detroit had a dead heat, and you could be happy with all of them. Sean Taylor, Kellen Winslow, Roy Williams. If that's true, you go down one spot, you pick up something, and you get a similar player.
Well, no, as we know, Cleveland was talking to the Giants about getting up to get Kellen Winslow. And as you mentioned, Roy Williams, actually for Matt Millen, had a higher grade last year than Charles Rogers had he come out. And, of course, the Lions took Charles Rogers. One other note here, though, if Detroit uses this pick, obviously it'll be Roy Williams. But there's no question that the Jacksonville Jaguars are trying to get up to this spot again to try and take Roy Williams.
All right, let's give Kellen Winslow II his due. His father was one of the all-time greats, not only at tight end. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They've been playing football, professional football, since 1920. There's about 200 guys in there. He's one of them. So, again, you talk about a pedigree like a Manning. Right?
He fits in that same mold. You know you got a great football player with Kellen Winslow II. I was surprised Washington didn't take him because I could dream of Vernius Coles at wide receiver with Kellen at tight end and the running back Clinton Portis. A lot of guys right there. But in Cleveland, of course, Butch Johnson. Butch, he knows a lot about him. Head coach for the Cleveland Browns. He knows a lot about this guy. This guy, you see his father right there. He can play football.
Yeah, look, Kellen. Hey, you know what? And Mel would talk about him. Just a tight end holding up a #1 jersey with Cleveland Browns. Not only you think Kellen Winslow, who was his dad,
Ozzie comes.
You think of Ozzie, no question about it. And then I think when you look at Kellen Winslow Jr., a Miami Hurricane, as Michael Irvin said, and Butch Davis passed on Clinton Portis a few years ago to take William Green, paid the price for that. He wanted a Hurricane. The only way he was going to get one was to move up. And I think when you look at this team, in this position, they have nothing of quality coming back. 4 tight ends, none of which are starter material. Garcia, the new quarterback, Jeff Garcia, is going to go to the tight end. And you look at Kellen Winslow Jr., an underrated blocker. He can at least, I think, do an adequate job in that area, but he has that approach of, I'm a dominator, I'm a presence. People say, well, it's an arrogance. Well, hey, that's what I want great players to have. They want the football. He was not fed the ball as much this past year as he really should have. Only had 1 touchdown reception. That came in the first game. I think the quarterback situation, going from Ken Dorsey to Brock Berlin, hurt Winslow, but when you saw the spectacular catches and the ability there, look at that athleticism. Remarkable. This kid is much more than a tight end. You watch him game after game when he had a quarterback who looked his way, and here, Berlin, and this was a 4th down play that saved the day. This is a catch, a clutch catch that Kellen Winslow Jr. makes time and time again. Looks a little careless with the football in the open field at times. Kind of becomes a running back. Gets that ball outside. You can strip it some. He's got to work on that with the Cleveland Browns, but they get a Hurricane, and they don't pay the price like they did a few years ago when they passed on Portis for William Green.
Did Butch recruit him?
Let's not forget that Butch Davis knows this group of Miami players better than any coach because he recruited Winslow and, of course, this entire class.
And what Cleveland needs, they need a guy that just loves to play the football game. They deserve that. Get that new dog pound going.
Hey, look, and Jeff Garcia, all right, let me get to him for a minute. People, you're not that good. Wait a minute. It's cold. He didn't have a strong. I mean, he played and won a Grey Cup in Calgary. He played in San Francisco. I don't see those things happening necessarily with the 49ers in the next year. Just what I'm saying is, for a quarterback like Garcia, who admittedly is not, Randall Cunningham, 80-yard rainbows. What a perfect idea to have a tight end like Kellen Winslow.
Well, we've heard Steve.
Right?
We have heard Steve Young even say. I want to put this on my. We've heard Steve Young say he would prefer a Pro Bowl tight end over a Pro Bowl receiver.
But Steve was lying because he had Jerry Rice. He was just joking.
But
he had Jerry Rice.
says that. Peyton Manning will tell you how valuable a great tight end is. Of course, Troy Aikman will tell you how valuable a great tight end is, like he had with Jay Novacek.
For most quarterbacks, when all else fails, I got a guy at the tight end position that I can just toss the ball to, and he's always in my view. So the tight end position is a very important.
And Michael, it's a tight end if you can get the ball to him. If you're not running around and trying to scramble for your life. That offensive line in Cleveland is still a problem. They had an interest in Robert Gallery. They were not going to be able to move up that high. Left tackle, that offensive line in general has got to allow Garcia to have the ability to do damage in the passing game through Winslow and company.
It's a good move by Cleveland, all right? The Cleveland Browns are under the microscope a little bit. A lot of changes up the top with the President Carmen policy only being a consultant after May 1. Butch Davis in control with the son of the old order, Al Lerner, Randy Lerner. There's some questions about Cleveland, but today they certainly look like they did a good job.
Hey, all right.
We're back in New York. Detroit again on the clock with their trade with Cleveland. We'll find out about the trade and their pick with the commissioner.
With the 7th pick in the 2004 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Roy Williams, wide receiver, University of Texas.
Well, and you got to like the outfit of Roy Williams, Mike. He obviously knew you were here.
I love the outfit, and it's fitting because, like you said, they liked Roy Williams last year, so they finally get him this year. They get him, and they put him with Charles Rogers. Ooh. And for a young quarterback, enjoy Harrington, who has to step up and play well this year.
All right, listen. Let's talk about Roy for a minute, because many thought equal or higher than Fitzgerald. Last year, Detroit, with the 2nd overall pick, took Charles Rogers, who was hurt. They're certainly giving Joey Harrington a heck of a chance to throw to people in his 3rd year as a starter.
No question. As Mort pointed out, the fact that Rivers jumped up, he was not one of that elite group that was #1 on teams' boards. Roy Williams was, and they get him at 7 for the Detroit Lions, put him opposite of...
Now, the Falcons would go on to select a running back with their pick here in this draft.
You're keeping in mind, this kid was a high jump standout. He was an excellent overall player at Texas, considering the fact that his numbers would have been better had it not been that conservative offense, and the fact that the quarterbacking this past year was below average when you talk about passing.
What a draft this was. So many Hall of Fame players came out of this draft. One of the hugest draft day trades happened of all time in this draft, which we show you here. And Eli Manning, he was selected with the 1st pick, go on to play for the Giants. Philip Rivers, selected with the 4th pick, he'd go on to play for the Chargers after the huge draft day trade. Then with the 11th pick, another Hall of Fame quarterback would be drafted who would lead their team to multiple Super Bowls, and a lot of depth in this draft, and there's so many great players who came out of this draft. And actually, while Philip Rivers was on the Chargers, I explained in my previous draft video, they had Drew Brees already. So then Drew Brees, when he got injured, he'd go on to be a free agent, and then he would go on to the Saints. So this effect of drafting caused a ripple effect in NFL and NFL history, to where there's just like so much talent in this draft. This was just one of the most historic drafts of all time.